Welcome to another House Planning Help Google Plus Hangouts. Today on the topic of teams. So we're looking forward to having a chat to our panel yet again, and that's why we're going to meet them now and hear a little bit about them. Bill, do you want to start? Just tell us a little bit about you.
Hello, yes, I'm Bill Butcher. I'm Director of Green Building Store, Huddersfield. As you know, Ben, you've been here. We're a company that specialises in low energy components, I suppose, specialising probably in passive house mainly. We have a small construction arm, so we are doing innovative type building works. We're on our third certified passive house project at the moment, but the vast majority of our turnover is in windows and doors, MVHR systems, but also training and consultancy.
And Elrond, also based in the UK, but from New Zealand.
Thanks, Ben.
I thought that was necessary.
Yeah, I'm a Kiwi, but I've been living in the UK now for 16 years. I am an architect and an associate at Archetype Architects here in the UK, and we're specialised for 30 years, really, in ecological and low-energy architecture, and in the last 6 or so years, progressively done more and more passive house. And I also have a personal blog at elrondburrell.com, which is pretty much blogging about passive house and kind of demystifying it and putting it into plain English so people can understand what it's all about.
Yeah, Mark, we're not trying to surround you with passive house people here, but how you doing?
I'm doing well. My name is Mark LePage. I'm the founder of Entrepreneur Architect, which is an online resource at entrearchitect.com, and my mission is to inspire small business architects to build better businesses so they can be more successful and live happier lives.
Nice, short and sweet. Well, today we wanted to talk about unifying a team, because virtually all builds are going to have a team. So I don't know who wants to start off. Elron, maybe you. Why is a team so important, getting that team atmosphere?
Why is it so important? Well, I guess any kind of undertaking or endeavour is all the more difficult if you're fighting against each other rather than working together. And I guess the thing that always comes to me about talking about teams is that quite often in the architecture and construction industry, there's a lot of talk about people being in their own silos and kind of working in their own discipline. And we very much push on the jobs where we can to try and get people to be more integrated and work together, and to kind of establish what the kind of project vision or the project aspiration is, so that it's not seen that one person or one consultant is just doing their job and kind of walking away, but rather everyone does work together to try and deliver the overall outcome. So that there's different things that we have that are outputs. So there's kind of the architectural design or drawings or things, but those are kind of the short-term view, and the longer-term view is the overall outcome. Which, if it's a person's house, then it's something that's benefiting and providing something for their life, and uplifting or supporting the way they want to live. Or if it's for a school or a business, then again it's something that really assists them in the clients or the people that are going to use the building, and having a facility that supports them in doing what their mission is to do, kind of thing. So I think it's, from our perspective, it's really important that you get together as a team to do that, because any one individual or any one party within that process can't do it by themselves. So we need to bring everyone together.
And Bill, how do you start off when you're doing one of your projects? How do you get the team together? Does it always have to be one group of people first, or how do you do it?
Well, each project's different, really. But you're right, teamwork is extremely important if we're going to deliver quality. Mainly because, well, particularly with, say, passive house, quality is everything compared to how the construction industry normally delivers in the UK. Round table work, everybody looking out for each other. must admit that I mean, I started out as a quantity surveyor and a contractor's quantity surveyor at that. And what you're taught to do is to try and catch the other quantity surveyor out, really. So the adversarial way of working just doesn't deliver. For example, the normal procurement route here in UK, which is design the building, write a specification or a bill of quantities, and then give it out to as many builders as will price for it. Those builders are not going to take ownership of that building, and particularly not the details of that building, because they're not going to put the effort into it. So a more partnership way of working, I feel, is the way forward. How that is done with all the mechanisms of checks and balances economically is for us to work out, but the standard UK method doesn't work, I would suggest. So teamwork is absolutely important, and I would say this, that I don't know anybody that doesn't enjoy doing a good job if they're recognised and respected, whether it's the architect, whether it's the client, or whether it's the labourer on site. Everybody has a place in this team.
Yeah, it sounds like a lot of sense. Mark, from your experience of different projects, is it easy to get people to buy into that core idea, or have you any stories to share?
Sure. One of the things I neglected to mention in my intro is that I'm also a partner in a small residential architecture firm here in New York, in the U.S. And so it is at times difficult to bring those teams together. I think one of the best ways that we do it at 5 Cat Studio is to right up front establish the expectations with the contractors that are going to work with our projects. Certainly there's teams on every project sort of as a standard. When we're in the design phase, we have systems and processes that we go through, and there are different people who have different roles and responsibilities, and that's pretty standard. But when we get into the construction end of things for small firms and sole proprietor architects, they don't always, for one, they don't always choose to take on the role in construction administration, and they allow their projects to move on without them. And for one, I would say that's a big mistake, because there's opportunities to protect yourself, for one, as an architect, but it also allows you to sort of build the team. It allows you to establish relationships with general contractors, and create those relationships long term, so your projects come out better. But one of the sort of the tricks that I've learned with general contractors is it's not really a trick, it's more of a being human, is to give them lots of respect and to defer to their experience. Yeah. One of the things that I found as a young architect very quickly is that when I would work with a seasoned contractor, they would be very defensive right off the bat, and they would expect me to be that arrogant architect that's sort of that stereotype. Yeah. And I would very quickly establish a relationship with them, saying, you know, first of all, I've been in his shoes. I've done construction intentionally so I could learn those roles and responsibilities and the way contractors think of architects. But I would let them know that I respect them and I understand their experience and I want to learn from them. And when I let them know that I'm here to learn from them as much as they're learning from me, very quickly that the attitudes change and we start to build a relationship, and the project ends up working out much better.
That's a really interesting point. So do you ever get the chance to go through different roles as well? Because that's another way of learning, isn't it? If you move around, sometimes businesses will do that, won't they, when they're trying to nurture talent, let them go into different departments. So is there any opportunity there?
You mean on the design team,
Well, just moving around. If you want to try and empathise more with a builder, having worked as a builder or alongside a builder for a while helps, and then going to check.
Yes, I think for young architects, I think that's very important. For me personally, I think it should be required. I think in order to get licensed, I believe that architects should have some hands-on construction experience. There are lots of people who disagree with me on that, but even if it's not a requirement, it's a recommendation from me to younger architects to spend some time in the field swinging a hammer, so they understand not only how the buildings go together, because you'll be a better architect, but even more importantly, to learn how contractors and builders think, to learn why contractors and builders have the feelings they do towards architects. When I was growing up, I grew up in a family of my father was an auto mechanic and my uncle was a carpenter, and I grew up hearing the stories from my uncle about the architects and how much they didn't like the architects and how the architects were this arrogant guy that kind of just gets in his way. And so when I got to the point and I told my uncle that I wanted to be an architect, first of all, he hated that idea. But then I told him what I wanted to work with him. I wanted to work with him to understand why they feel that way about us. And for several winters, I worked with him and a mason that he actually introduced me to. Before I even went to university, I carried concrete block and mixed cement and carried bricks and built garages and houses and had my hand hurt from holding the hammer for 18 hours. And it's and those lessons, and through doing that, you understand the mentality of the contractor and you start understanding why they feel the way they do. And now, as an architect, when those situations arise, I'm prepared to be able to respond to them because I could put myself in their shoes and understand where they're coming from, and then very quickly diffuse the problems that come up.
Are there ever situations, anyone jump in here, where you can feel the team is actually going in two directions, or someone from the team perhaps have a different agenda?
I think that happens quite often.
Right, can you give us an example?
Okay, so on a larger scale project, I've quite often had the experience where another consultant working together with us is really just looking to deliver their calculations and drawings and then walk away, and they're not interested in engaging and developing a kind of integrated design together or coming up with what the best solution is. They'd much rather just do their familiar solution because they know they can do that within their fee and then walk away and not have to think about it. That's a very typical one. And I think that it happens at the site stage as well, where you're talking with a contractor or the subcontractor on site and you're explaining where we need to get to, because the finished product that needs to be delivered, and you can see that they're just looking at the amount of time they've got left to before they're meant to sign out, or they're looking at how much more they've got to spend on materials or things like that. And they're just looking for ways out. And sometimes you can absolutely understand that sometimes, particularly on a big construction site, the guy who's managing it has got a job to try and deliver and get the quality right for the architect and the client. But at the same time, he's got a commercial director who's coming visiting him every day or every week and really chasing him about the profits and about the time, all that kind of stuff. So they are put in a position where they're really got a lot of tension between different agendas that are pulling at them.
Does it get tougher with a bigger team, Bill?
I suppose in the sense that you've got more people that could not be on board in terms of numbers. But I mean, in the end, it's leadership, isn't it? The team, whether that's the client or the builder or the architect, if you like, in simplistic terms, all need to be on board. You also need, well, with Passive House again, I keep on going back to it. You need somebody that really understands the workings of PHPP. You need good design work. You need longer lead times, usually, than for a standard British building regs job, for example. So, I mean, if there's strong leadership and most people are on board, you usually can surround the person that's not necessarily.
Does leadership have to come from one person, or is it just It can be that trio that you just mentioned.
Well, I think the client definitely has to be on board. The client really has to want what they want. If they go in for something that's abnormal, if it's going to be higher quality, the client really has to stick with the architect and maybe the builder. But I mean, we're in a very privileged position, if you like. We're project leaders, so we can bring in a team, we can bring in the architect, whether they're going to be on board with us with a design and build, or whether they're going to be employed directly by the client, which is the usual way of doing it. But we actually do the detailed work in-house ourselves, and so we have a construction firm. And this is a bit unusual in that all our construction team knows what is expected of them.
So you make up most of the team, Bill. You and your lot make up most of the team, Bill.
Yeah, well, we're lucky, really.
Picking up on some of what Bill said and some also what Mark was saying, is that actually it's kind of we kind of talk about the team, but actually the team is a kind of a organic thing which changes over time. And like Mark was talking about, talking to the builders on site, and that is it. Depending on the scale of the project, you might have different subcontractors on site for a period of time, not for the whole build. And actually, it's really important that either the leadership from the architect, client, or the design side, or just from the main contractor or the main foreman on site, can bring each of those people up to speed when they come on.
Yeah.
And not just instruct them on what they have to do and what they can't do in that, but actually to really imbue with them a sense of what the kind of spirit and the purpose of the project is, so that they can feel that sense of personal ownership and pride in what they do, so that they know that they've actually got an important role to play. So they're not just seen as the person that walks on site and does their bit and walks off again or makes a mess or whatever, but they're seen as an integral part of the overall process. But it is, obviously I work on much larger scale projects than the one-off houses and things, but it is the team kind of grows and then shrinks again and grows and shrinks again at different times, and it is important to have some kind of continuity through that process.
Yeah.
It's not always possible that continuity is one person, but at least that there's enough shared understanding of the project and the purposes that can kind of flow through all the different team members.
Because Elron, one thing that I thought of when you were saying that is that how much of the time are you working in the office and almost you're not needed on site? Is there a balance of the two? And also with Mark, who works remotely, that's quite interesting. We'll have to come on to that in a second, whether it's tougher to have an online team. But just that question to you first, Elron.
It depends on the scale of the project. So if it's we would expect on a, let me think about that, on a project where we've got the kind of level of involvement we'd expect to be on site at least once a week. And depending on the scale of the project, that might be for half an hour, it might be for the whole day. And in that case, once a week on a reasonable sized project is quite frequent, and the builder, really knows that you're there and involved with them. On a smaller scale project, you're on somewhere our appointments are a bit different. Like we're doing a school at the moment, and we're only on site once a month, and that does feel a little bit detached from the process and from the project. And so I think that's one where the team is not very well formed, and in fact the contractor is kind of slightly excluding us in a way, because that's kind of their attitude on that particular project, and that's the way the project's been set up, and it's been set up in a way that isn't really conducive to having a good team in a way, which is unfortunate, because it is quite an ambitious project from the client's perspective. But if it's a small house project like that, then I think you really have to ask Bill or Mark as to what their involvement on site would be. It's a totally different scale in that case.
Mark, moving on to online, we're obviously chatting now, we're in a Google Plus Hangout, but how you go about your work, how much do you find that you're doing online, and how much has to be done physically?
Well, we're set up as a virtual studio. If people don't know our story, we had a large 2,000 square foot office space, and last November we chose to move out of that office space, and we now work remotely. We have a home office where my wife and who is also my partner, she's an architect as well, we're partners in the firm. We have separate studios in the house, and our project manager now is local but remote. And we're bringing on a second project manager who will also be local but remote. So they're working from their own studios. And then the other production staff is more flexible, and they work anywhere in the world. Right now we work with 2 people in North Carolina and South Carolina. And so there is some growing pains. We just started last November, so we're just about a year into it. And it is difficult to from a team point of view, because you no longer have all those people in one big room, which sort of lends itself to build those teams. But what's very important, and it really goes for any team, whether it's virtual or physical, is that there's a strong leader, that there's somebody who's in charge, who is sort of orchestrating the process. If you use a sports analogy, you can use an American football sports analogy. There's always a quarterback, and when the quarterback is a strong leader, then the team usually is a very good team. I mean, you have to have other people doing their jobs. They all have to know their roles and their responsibilities, and they need to do their jobs very well. But if you don't have somebody sort of guiding them and telling them what they're going to do next, then the team, even if they're great players, the team's going to fall apart. And so I think it is important to have a strong leader and so everybody knows what they're doing, they know their roles and their responsibilities. And I think whether it's an architecture studio or a construction site, when people know their roles and responsibilities, teams are stronger. It's when people are confused in and they don't know what they're supposed to do, or they're duplicating roles. Sometimes when you have an interior designer maybe on a project, and an architect, and a project manager, there's lots of roles and responsibilities there that can overlap. And if somebody doesn't establish who's doing what, that team can fall apart very, very quickly, because people will start doing things that other people are either responsible for, and so people will start feeling like you're stepping on their toes, or things don't get done because they both kind of put their hands off and nobody does the job. And so it's very important that there is those roles and responsibilities, and there is one single leader on the team, even if they don't have a lot more power than everybody else, but there's one person who says, okay, this is how we're going to run this project.
Yeah. I agree very much, actually. You there? Am I online?
Yeah, you're on.
I'm on. There are so many things that both Elron and Mark have said there that is so true. Actually modern technology and mobile phones, and actually the camera on the phone can actually bring a lot of communication which wasn't there only a few years ago. I agree. I would say a visit to site once a week is generally, but really what people need to know is that there's somebody at least at the other end of the phone or email that is actually going to answer them very quickly and is taking them seriously. And it is all about communication and those lines of communication. So people know who they can go to get questions answered. Could I add also that the architect used to be the master builder, and the idea that architects should actually pick a hammer up and a saw, I think, is wonderful. But I'm afraid it doesn't happen in the UK at all.
It doesn't happen much
Christopher
here
Wren's
either.
birthday as well, talking about master architects.
Pardon?
Today's Christopher Wren's birthday as well, talking about master architects.
Oh, right, okay.
Oh, yeah, you armed with that fact.
I was very lucky, actually. I made a decision when I was 25 to give up office life. I just didn't enjoy it. I didn't become a chartered surveyor in the end. I went out and basically learnt building. I became a labourer on site, and it actually gives you great insight into how hard it is to be 8 o'clock on a February morning up a scaffold, bloody freezing.
Yes. I've been
I
there.
feel like I've not done any time on a building site myself at all, other than as an architect. I did quite a few seasons doing farm labouring, so I'll kind of count that as my time out in the weather doing physical labour.
Mark, I was just going to ask. So I know it's early days, but obviously it's a major change that's happening in the landscape with the internet. Do you feel it's the right move? You're definitely in the right place, having a virtual studio.
With our change, I would definitely say it's the right move. For one, we're saving a tremendous amount of money. We cut our expenses by 40%. There are systems that we still need to get into place and to establish the right ways of doing things now that we're no longer in the same big room. It takes lots of discipline from a leader's point of view to make sure that the work is getting done, and not only that it's getting done, because you can hire people that you trust and you know they're working, but to make sure that they're doing what needs to get done and that they're not going down the wrong path before you catch it.
Yeah,
when you're in a big room, it's easy to walk around that big room a couple times a day and see what people are doing on the boards. Today, we need to actually go onto Dropbox, pull a file down, look at what they're doing, making sure that it's doing, they're doing what they need to do. I think also as we grow, I mean, right now we're one project manager bringing on a second, and we work on and off with some production people. I think as we grow, that's going to take some doing as well. I think that'll get some complicated pieces as well, but we'll figure it out just like we figured out the big studio. We didn't know what we were doing when we opened the big studio either, so we'll learn what we need to know.
People file a kind of just like a short summary of what they've done each day to you, or is it just down to you reviewing what they've stuck in Dropbox?
Well, the project manager that works with us now is someone that's been with us for 10 years.
This is the legendary John, isn't it?
Yeah, John. Yeah. So he is somebody who knows how we do it. He's been doing it long enough, so I trust I can just tell him to do it, and I know he's going to do it the way I want him to do it. And so there's a little less oversight required there, but there still needs to be oversight because you need to make sure that you're. And what's happening is that he's doing more checking back to confirm that he understands what I'm saying. So if I email him a request, he's coming back to me either with an email or a telephone call saying, this is what I understand you're saying before I get started, just so we make sure we're on the same page.
Making the communication much more explicit rather than just kind of assuming.
Yeah, and that's something that we'll have to put into place more formally as we bring on people that we don't have experience with. But I think it's the future of small firm architecture. I think that sole proprietors and very small firms, it's a great way to start because now you can start with very little overhead, much less risk because most people have computers and software already for their own personal use. You can set up a Dropbox and set up an Evernote account and you're in business. And there's, you want to grow out of that, but it's a good.
I have a question for you on that, Mark. Is that that's obviously you're exploring and growing with the internal team, as it were, the design team. Is that how far does that translate over to working with your clients? So how much do you share documents with your clients on Dropbox and then ask them to respond, or do you always make sure that you meet them in person as much as you would have previously? Because I know you did comment on your podcast once that clients never came into your office because of the nature of your clients. You're always going out to meet them in person.
Correct, yeah. And that really, at this point, that hasn't changed. Externally, very few people even know, other than there's an address change, very few people know that anything has changed. We've been in business for over 15 years now, and so, or no, whatever it is, 1999, yeah, 15 years. And quick math. Really good at that. And so, from an external point of view, from a brand point of view, our market doesn't know we've changed, and the way we work with clients hasn't changed either. We're still meeting with them in their houses. We have in the past, just out of necessity, when we work with clients, maybe in New York City, which is about 40 minutes away, that for years we've been using PDF files and email, and we haven't used video because we just didn't need to at the time, but most of our projects are still just face-to-face meetings with clients.
Well, I think we're going to wrap it up there, but maybe if anyone wants to plug their website. Elron, do you want to start? Your website is doing rather well, isn't it?
My personal blog website, that is, yeah, that's elronburrell.com. That's where I blog about Passive House mostly. Thank you.
Are you going to do the archetype one as well?
Oh yes, and the Archetype one, which is the firm I work for, is Archetype, architype.co.uk, and it's been recently redone, well, a few months ago now, I think, for our 30th anniversary, so it's looking very shiny and snazzy with lots of beautiful large photographs and very clean design now.
And Bill?
Well, we blog on our business website, so that's www.greenbuildingstore.co.uk. A bit intermittent, but I enjoy doing it. That's a business model, really, which is to give out information for various, I think hiding stuff just doesn't help in the end commercially. It works for us. It helps us sell our goods. I think people hopefully trust us that we know what we're talking about. I think we do. I hope we do.
It's really good newsletter as well, Bill. So.
Oh yes, sorry.
Yes, Jamie's Bill's website and sign up for the
newsletter. She puts a lot of effort into it. We don't advertise very much. We use this medium, newsletters, blogs, to get the message across.
Yes, I think we're all into that. And Mark?
Yes, my website is Entre Architect, E-N-T-R-E, as in entrepreneur, entrearchitect.com. And I write a weekly blog. I do a weekly podcast, which you can also get the link on the website. And I do a free weekly newsletter as well. So if you're interested in success in architecture for small firm architects, that's what I do. And I love doing it, so connect with me. I'm on Twitter too, all over Twitter. So Entre Architect on Twitter. It's how I know you guys. So yeah, great place to connect for architects.
It is interesting, isn't it, how you can meet across social media these days. But really enjoyed this chat, and thank you very much. We'll have another Google Plus Hangout coming soon. Thanks, gentlemen.
Great. Thanks for inviting me.
Very much. Bye.